Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke, but I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
Hello, Brian.
Hello.
I wanted to, I just had 2 sessions with Dina, and they're going to weigh on my brain, and I'm pushing it aside. I wanted to say, as a result of taping last week, for the first time in a year and a half, for a few hours, my desire to self-sabotage came raging back, and the shame came raging back, and I don't self-sabotage with alcohol. I don't use substance. Typically, that means sugar. And the shame of using my voice. I know that my voice is going to hear those that need to hear it. I know that. That's the way my life's always been. And the synchronicities I experience make me realize that doing this podcast is a big part of how I'm being done right now. And I could, go to the gutter and make 75 sexual analogies. As a result of talking about serial sedation, historically, having a spiritual awakening, which I still am hedging, I'll get there. I want to talk about the shadow, which is something that Carl Jung, let's call him Carl, he talked about archetypes, including persona, the shadow, all types of things when it comes to our psyche. And I mentioned in my podcast from last week that I am utilizing William Ward's book to dumb down Carl Jung for me. I am listening to him more in interviews and reading his works, but it's real challenging stuff, and it's all subject to interpretation. So I just want to say that this is William Ward's interpretation of Jung, and I want to read about the shadow. And I'm going to call him Carl again. Carl called the shadow the thing we don't want to be. It's the part of ourselves we deny, reject, ignore, or bury. Not because it's evil, but because it doesn't fit the image we're trying to maintain. Everyone has a shadow. It begins the moment we start choosing who to be, because with every choice we also decide who not to be. That decision doesn't erase the unwanted part, it just pushes it out of sight. But it stays active, and if we don't face it consciously, it leaks out in distortion, projection, and repetition. The shadow isn't always negative. It contains everything we've disowned. It might be anger, envy, manipulation, laziness, but it can also be joy, confidence, sexuality, ambition, creativity. Carl called these disowned gifts the golden shadow. Oh, I could make a joke there. We all could. Sometimes what we suppress isn't what's wrong with us, what is wrong with us. It's what doesn't feel allowed. This is my personal shame. Maybe you learned not to shine, not to speak, not to want too much. So you became small, helpful, and visible. Your shadow may not be monstrous. It may be radiant and buried. Carl said the shadow is 90% pure gold. That didn't mean it's harmless and meant it holds energy. And wherever there's energy, there's potential. But before you can work with it, you have to see it, and that's not easy. The ego resists. It wants to feel consistent, decent, justified. So it creates a story. I'm not angry. I'm just tired. I'm not controlling. I'm just helping. I'm not jealous. I just care. The shadow hides in those justifications, and it waits. The most common way the shadow shows up is through projection. We see it in others, but we won't admit in ourselves. You might despise arrogance in someone while denying your own hunger for recognition. You might be furious at someone's emotional neediness while secretly wanting to be cared for. Projections feel intense because they aren't about the other person. They're about you. The shadow lives in that intensity. Okay, now this is how little insight to the way that I think. Having survived intense narcissistic abuse and having forgiven those who have abused me for my own sake, I know that's not for everybody, and I'm not suggesting it if it isn't for you. But I relate narcissism to the shadow, which means it exists in all of us. And I think, although many gurus have been helpful in my journey, I think we have, in our effort to avoid labels, in our efforts to avoid psychology, neurology, we have done a disservice to both those who've been abused and do abuse, and the crossovers between the two. This is something that Carl was able to address, in the 40s, 50s. He died in the 60s, without calling it narcissism, but it was. And I maintain narcissism has been around since the beginning of time, and one could argue the shadow has been around since the beginning of time. I became well-versed in narcissism in the early 2000s, and then I have subsequently seen, as it's become more and more popular, as we point fingers and we try to determine what the fuck's going on culturally, societally, in one-on-one relationships. So now that I've said that, I'm hoping that for those of you who understand the shadow can understand that narcissism is the shadow, based on how I just described it. Projection isn't conscious. That's what makes it tricky. You genuinely believe the other person is the problem. You might even gather evidence, but the reaction is disproportionate. It stings more than it should. It sticks in your mind. It follows you. Carl said the best clue to projection is emotional charge. If something or someone really gets to you, especially if it seems irrational or repetitive, you're likely dealing with shadow material. And I would argue narcissism. One thing that I hope to do, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, and I hope to do it through, I've said before, I don't want to go back to school to have these opinions. I just want to have read and studied enough that it impacts others. And I feel like I hold the mirror. The mirror was held up to me in recent years, and I'll get to that story eventually. But I feel like I hold the mirror. And it speaks to why I am somewhat off-putting at times. It also speaks to my ignorance for many years about being autistic, and then finally realizing that, which just adds to my theories on narcissism, because I don't think autism and narcissism are remotely alike, but the crossovers are really interesting. Next week, I speak to an autistic guest, good friend of mine, who is I'll try to shut up and let him speak, because he has some really, really wonderful insights into what he calls benevolent narcissism. So we'll leave that there. So part of what I hope to do without having to get an advanced degree is develop, and it stems from historically from Kant, K-A-N-T, Kant. Some people speculate that he was on the autistic spectrum, but it's tied to our potential for benevolence versus malevolence. So where we have an intelligent quotient, IQ, or emotional quotient, EQ. I'm very interested in how we view our own MQ, BQ, benevolent quotient, benevolent quotients. And it's not exactly good and evil. It's more like what I read, the shadow, our potential for facing our shadow or ignoring it. So our potential to heal ourselves versus hurt others. I know for myself, I didn't catch the cycle I was repeating till my sons were, I want to say, 12 and 15. And I did not abuse the same way I was abused, but I certainly did things where it would be hard to discern. I knew what my motivation was for doing these things, and it was always to protect, heal, and not fortify the cycle of abuse. But inadvertently, I was overcompensating for things that I maintain. I didn't know why I did them yet. I didn't have a good understanding of what I had gone through until fairly recently, and I'm 55. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that, I hate the word hope, and I just said it 3 times. I have faith that whatever journey you're supposed to be on, you can step on, hold your own mirror. It's the hardest thing ever to face yourself. And in my case, facing myself meant the loss of everything near and dear. Everything. Or at least what I thought was. Some of it I could have done, some of it needed to get gone. But other things, the collateral damage around the decision to heal, you just have to sit with yourself. And I hesitate after talking to Dina. I am an introvert, borderline recluse. I might joke, and I've said it before on here, as 10 years of doing this, and then I'm gonna have the house with the moat around it. This is very, very, very hard. As much as I'm enjoying it, it's very, very hard for me because I am in the midst of my own journey, and I'm enjoying it tremendously. You may not realize, but I'm enjoying it tremendously. It's just hard to feel. And it's in that contradiction of the messiness of healing and in the ability to not sedate joy. I sedated pain with ease. But when I caught myself sedating joy, I was like, oh, now we got a problem. And that maintains one of my, that's not the word I want. That maintains. I do that a lot. I misspeak. Have you caught that, how often I misspeak?
I have a running tally. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I once said to one of my sons, I said, I am, I support human trafficking. And he goes, no. That's not what you mean. That's not what you mean. Oh, I'm against it. I'm in support of efforts to prevent it. Yeah, that's what you meant. So I do that a lot. Yeah, that's fucked up. Anyway, so within that contradiction of healing, feeling all this stuff as an introvert, as Dina and I touched on, and Jordan Peterson has touched on, Jordan Peterson strikes me as a modern day Freud. I could be really fucking wrong, but I have a feeling that's like what it was like to talk to Freud. It's just a thought. It doesn't have to be true. Sorry, Jordan. And I enjoy listening to Jordan. But Jeff Foster talks about I know I read something he wrote last week. Don't remember what it was. But this is something this week that I found that talks about that place of dealing with the messiness of facing yourself in my opinion, versus the joy and solitude that comes out of it, should you be a solitude seeker, which I am. The ones who can sit with profound contradiction, who can feel heartbreak and not run away from it, who can let fire and softness live inside of them. These are the ones who stay human. Compassion is born from the willingness to hold paradox. Cruelty is born from the refusal to feel, which goes right back to the shadow, goes right back to narcissism. Narcissism is a combination of self-love and self-loathing. That is the long and short definition of narcissism in my mind. It's very active culturally. And I'm not going to get into the big picture, but if we believe in parallel universes or realities, we're experiencing something right now that we've experienced before as a society. And it's really interesting how it's playing out. And I'm not trying to insinuate anything. I'm middle of the road when it comes to politics, so I'm not trying to state. I'm trying to approach politics from a psychological perspective. What's going on in people's minds, how they behave, that type of thing. I don't begin to. My brain's going, stop, so I'm going to stop. I do make some funny Trump jokes, but they're sexual. They're sexual jokes.
It's a slippery slope, the politics.
Is it? We should be able to talk about it.
Unless you're talking to someone that's completely objective about it, I think it can get a little slippery.
I don't know if I'm objective, but I see both sides, and it's really evident.
It's incredibly important that everyone should see both sides, I think.
Yeah, I think. I'm not trying to have that conversation.
Yeah, no,
I have written.
We'll pull that out when we're scratching for topics.
I've written a few, when Elon Musk and Trump were having words, and I have a whole philosophy behind their personalities, all that fucking shit that I don't want to get into. Unless somebody asks. Somebody asks me, I'll tell you, but I just don't want to offer it. But I was just like, oh God, let me just write some dialogue for those two motherfuckers, because that's like my sweet spot, those two personalities, what a dick contest. One of them wins flaccid, one of them wins hard. I mean, and I think we know the answer to that without me telling you the joke. So, minute-wise, where are we?
18.
Yeah, man,
You're right on that mark.
I know.
18 minutes.
I'm
just going to start holding my hands up when we get to 18 minutes.
Why don't you?
You don't even have to ask me anymore. Only took us
I think
5 episodes to figure that out.
First time I've blown my nose in public. Sorry about that. All right, so being an introvert, from Carl stems this thing called Myers-Briggs. 2 women, I might add. Don't remember the fucking first names, but I know they were female. Came up with this, based on Jung's archetypes, they came up with this personality thing that used to be really popular a long, long time ago. And it's still very popular if you're a seeker and trying to figure out what makes you you. And I subscribe to it, but I know a pubic hair compared to what other people know about it. Essentially, there are 4 categories where you make a decision. One is being an introvert versus an extrovert, and then from there's other decisions to be made based on how you handle things. And I come out similarly to what Carl, I'm so used to calling him Carl. he was projected to be what's called an INFJ. Now, if this intrigues you, look up Myers-Briggs. You'll get the crash course on what you need to. If it was very helpful to me as a seeker because I had already figured out I was on the autistic spectrum. I already had experienced significant PTSD called CPTSD. So I was trying to determine what personality I was, and very, very many INFJs, a lot are autistic. And I think there's a distinction, and again, if somebody asks me, I describe it, but I don't really want to distinguish it because we'll get there eventually. But as a result of what I was saying, and again, sometimes I hope that I don't have to convey my exact message, that'll be clear. These are things about being an IFJ and doing this podcast and the things I want to talk about. This gives you an idea as to why, and I think it speaks to many of us. I see and treat all people as equal and expect nothing less in return. I equally detest being put on a pedestal as I do being underestimated and having my intelligence insulted, which, as an autistic, happens all the time. You do not have to like me, but respecting me and my principles and boundaries isn't optional. It won't take me long to figure you out and understand you better than you are, even aware of yourself. And that's where I was derailed as an autistic. And, I just didn't expect people to lie. And it sounds naive and gullible, but you just don't expect people to lie 100 times. You just don't expect them to lie. I do whatever I say I will do and say only that which I'm ready to do. I don't make threats. I make promises. My personality type, not me, because I've learned where the wiggle room is over the years. I've had to because of the problems I've had with abuse, but I'm very careful with my energy. No matter how much I cherish being with you, I need space and time alone for everyone's sake and sanity. Ain't that the truth? I'm supposed to play pool tonight. I'd rather bungee jump from my nipples than play pool. Brian's not paying attention.
I heard it.
It's like I ignore you and then I need you.
Yeah.
I ignore you and then I need you. I don't really need to hear or care about apologies that aren't accompanied by changed behavior without hiccups. And as I've aged, I've become increasingly allergic to closed minds, narcissism, small talk, loud noise, and idiots. But I totally understand and respect narcissism, and narcissism's a spectrum. I do not hold grudges or play games. I simply detach. Oh, yeah, I'm good at that. No matter how brave, strong, or intimidating I may appear, deep down I am a total softie with pure motives and a fear of opening up only to be abandoned forever. That's pretty intense. But there's a Carl Jung concept called anima and animus that I'll probably get to, if not in the next podcast, by next week. And that also speaks to the two sides of things. And I think as a society, we're very confused about what's divine in us that's masculine versus what's divine in us that's feminine. And that's something that I know for myself. This persona is very masculine. I am a much softer person in my femininity than I come across on this podcast. Yet that is the part of me that was most ignored by men. So I was never able to be that. It's very intriguing when I really think about it because of the way I relate to men. I've learned a lot these last few months talking to men in restaurants. That's all I'll say. I've survived severe trauma, years of suffering, and some of the most evil folks on earth. The evil folks on earth just haven't examined their shadow. and it's getting harder to look at yourself in the society we cultivate, where capitalism's broken and we base so much on production. I'm not looking for your sympathy. All I need is to be listened to and believed. I don't question being believed. I just have trouble using my voice because it's still, in a one-on-one conversation, rarely do I get to topics I want to discuss with people. I sort of just enjoy the conversation and let come forth. And unfortunately, that gives the other person the feeling we're connecting, where very often I'm just getting a social fix. And I go home and move on with my solitude, and that person ends up interested in spending more time with me, and I'm like, oh, we really didn't connect because you never asked me about anything that matters to me, which doesn't matter to me. But that's why this podcast matters to me. I care more about doing what's right than being right. Well, I think there's a few people in my life that would argue that, but I've always said to people, I don't give a shit what your opinion is. Just please tell me what your opinion is. I just need the honesty. Shoot me in the face. Don't give me a song and dance. So I hope you can see how all that shit was related, because I'm starting to wonder. And I appreciate it. And we're going to end this one here.
Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J-Ma.